Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up, the WNW 186 for April 17th, 2015. Remember last week I was telling you that of all the issues that the Democrats and Republicans could join together on, that the Iran nuclear deal would be the one where they could override a veto. And sure enough, they got a bipartisan veto-proof majority and told the president that they will be overseeing the Iran nuclear deal. And the president had been threatening vetoes and saying that it wasn't their place. Look at this headline on last Sunday. Obama says GOP has overstepped in foreign affairs. Of course, that's preposterous. Congress has not overstepped in a deal this big with a country on the State Department state sponsor of terror list. No, this is a huge deal, and the Congress did not overstep its bounds. And if you look right here, right over here, this is another preposterous thing. If you can see this here, the mainstream media right here, emerging nuclear deal, emerging. It's emerging. Let me tell you about this. It's not emerging. There is no deal. And now with Congress, with oversight of this deal, you can bet there's not going to be a deal. Why? Because Congress is going to force meaningful inspections, number one. Number two, the sanctions are not going to be lifted all at one time on June 30th. No way. Iran has said, you're not you're not inspecting our nuclear plants, our nuclear facilities. You're not doing it, our military nuclear facilities. And when we sign this deal, sanctions will be lifted. Otherwise, there's no deal. And that is from the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, has said the sanctions aren't lifted. The day we sign this deal, no deal. So there's no deal. Congress assures that there is going to be no deal. And if you look at the way the U.S. Day spun this, I mean, here after all this talk of vetoes and the GOP has overstepped its boundaries, and, the White House, basically says, or the White House okays vote on Iran Pact. Yeah, of course it okays the vote on Iran Pact because they had a veto-proof majority, a tremendous veto-proof majority, and it would have been an exercise in futility if the president would have vetoed, the Congress having oversight over the Iran nuclear deal. So of course he okays it. That's what USA Today kind of covered the president after all these veto threats and all these nasty things, and the president sitting down doing interviews saying, well, if they'd have to have a symbolic vote, they can have that, but they're overstepping. No, what? No. Congress is going to oversee this deal. Therefore, they're going to force a much tougher deal. The Iranians have already said, you're not going to inspect our military sites, and you're going to lift these sanctions the day we sign this deal. Totally polar opposite to what the president said in the Rose Garden. Polar opposite to what Congress thinks. And I think the Iranians got really angry. I mean, think about this. The supreme leader of Iran and the president and their secretary of state, their version, their foreign minister, came out and said that the White House was spinning, lying, and that the White House was lying, Obama was lying. When does a country in negotiation call the other leaders liars? And there still is a negotiation. Why is that not a deal killer in and of itself? And you know what I think happened? The Iranians have been very consistent. I've been covering this for 2-3 years since I've been up, since this P+5+1 and this negotiation going out. Russia, China, Germany, France, the U.S., Great Britain. I've been covering this. The Iranians have been very, very consistent. They've said, you're not going to inspect our military program. We're going to continue to enrich uranium. And in this deal, they said, listen, when we sign this deal, that's it. Sanctions are lifted. And I think that the Iranian foreign minister and the Secretary of State sat at a table and, Kerry said, sure, we'll lift the sanctions. Don't worry. We won't inspect your military sites. And then, the supreme leader hears the president in the Rose Garden saying, oh, yeah, the sanctions will be lifted gradually because that's how he had to sell it. And we're going to have meaningful inspections so they can never get a nuclear weapon. What? And so what did the Iranians say? They said, you're liars. Top management all the way to the top called us liars. And you know, there's this U.S. distrust of Iran, but Iran has distrust of the United States. And look at our commander-in-chief and all the lies he's been called. Bo Bergdahl, served with honor and distinction, lie. You can keep your doctor and it's going to be cheaper and you can keep your health, lie. You know, oh, there's not a smidgen of evidence with, the IRS being used as a political tool to thwart your enemies back in 2010 and 2012. Lie. Unbelievable. So, of course, the president, the United States spying on its allies, including Angela Merkel of Germany. You wonder why the Iranians distrust the United States? It's unbelievable. And if you didn't for 1 minute think that that was enough information to know there is going to be no deal. I mean, the U.S. is going to demand inspections and we're not going to lift sanctions. Iran has said you're not going to inspect our military sites and you are going to lift sanctions or there's no deal. There's no deal. This is kabuki theater. And if you ever thought there was no deal, look at this headline right here. Now, why would Russia, after suspending sales of air defense missiles to Iran since 2010, why would there be this big push to now send Iran, air defense systems? Of course, this is, when they agreed to not send this air defense missiles to Iran, that was before the whole debacle in the Ukraine and also Syria, where our navies ended up meeting each other, and that no shots were fired, but the red line thing in Syria and all the other things, all the other nasty, we destroyed, cut the value of the ruble, we cut oil, which hurt, Vladimir Putin, and now, Russia and Vladimir Putin. Russia is sending this air defense system to Iran. And it's sophisticated, and it's going to make bombing Iran's nuclear program much tougher. So my question is by the virtue of the fact that they're sending this air defense system to Iran, does that mean that the Arabs or the U.S. or the Israelis or somebody's going to hurry up and bomb the Iranian nuclear program, which is all over the country, and some of it's in deep bunkers? Is that going to be a fear? I don't know. But one thing I do know, this missile deal greatly complicates any kind of military action, and there's no deal. So it's actually two things: no deal, and new missiles to Iran greatly complicates any kind of military action over there. Meanwhile, the rest of the Middle East seems to be descending into chaos, and we'll start with Yemen. And it looks like the al-Qaeda terrorists are winning in Yemen. I remember I told you that the Saudis would probably team up, at least covertly, with al-Qaeda and take on the Houthi rebels, which are Shia Muslims. Al-Qaeda is Sunni. And, the Iranians and the Houthis say the Iranians are not backing them. People like Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina in the U.S. Senate says, oh, yeah, they're backing them. And so evidently the bombing campaign where America is helping Saudi Arabia, the bombing campaign seems to be working, and the people who have taken over oil fields and airports and other things, al-Qaeda. And who could be happy about this? Houthis, terrorist. Al-Qaeda, terrorist. At some point, no matter who's victorious, Yemen, at least for a while, is going to be controlled by a terrorist organization. Yemen, of course, sits at on the east side of a major choke point on the Mandeb Strait, which is only about 20 miles wide, and it's the where all the ships go into, where they funnel into the Suez Canal, where 3 million barrels of oil a day go through the Suez Canal, which is why Egypt is also involved in wanting to keep that open. But no matter who wins in Yemen, which is chaos, pure chaos, at the end of the day, some terror group, either Houthi or al-Qaeda, is going to control Yemen. That can't make anybody feel good. In Iraq, the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth, from ISIS back over to, Iraq, which is backed by Shia militia, who are partial to the Iranians. And last week or so, Tikrit, that the Iraqi military with Shia militia put a major hurting on ISIS in Tikrit. Well, now this week, Ramadi, ISIS is putting a major hurting on Ramadi and the Iraqi military forces. That's nowhere near being over. They're just fighting it out. And the fighting's getting worse and uglier, and it's getting more expensive. And it's every day it goes on, the chaos increases. Every single day it goes on. Adding instability to the Middle East, now there are reports out that Iran is going to be funding Hezbollah on the Syrian-Israeli border, and one of the targets there is the Golan Heights. They are, what reports say, they are ramping up arming Hezbollah and also Hamas in the south. Remember, they don't have a peace deal with Hamas in the south. They just have a so-called truce. So it's reported that Iran is going to continue and intensify the proxy war it has against Israel. None of this is stabilizing. All of it is destabilizing, and it could very well and probably will turn into a much wider war at some point. Oh, and by the way, about those missiles that the Russians are selling, the missile defense system, the air defense system the Russians are selling, you have to remember, too, that back in January, Iran and Russia signed a military pact. So if someone does attack Iran, does that mean Russia's going to be involved as well? And the answer to that is who knows. Greece continues to be the canary in the EU coal mine, but it's hanging on. Greece, the leaders in Greece are saying that Greece has its own form of a Great Depression going on in their country. They can't pay the debt back. We've heard that from many guests here. They can't pay the debt back. Most of the countries in the world with all this debt will never pay it back. And that includes countries like Italy, Spain, France, the U.S. Major debt, major indebtedness. And if Greece does get a big cut in debt, every other country with debt's going to want a big cut in debt. If Greece decides we're defaulting, we're leaving, many other countries may say, we're defaulting and leaving too. We're not paying this off, period, the end. We're going to go back to our own currency. Either way, the insolvent banks and banking system in the EU that's being propped up by trillions of dollars in derivatives, tens of trillions of dollars in derivatives, is going to explode. And all that's going to reverberate around the world, and it is going to come to the U.S. And the news is not much better on this side of the pond. The so-called recovery is non-existent. I've been telling you this. Every week you hear, recovery. There's a recovery. It's a fragile recovery. There's no recovery. Housing starts are down. They were supposed to pop up with the warm weather. They did not. Unemployment has ticked up. Economist John Williams at shadowstats.com says housing and retail sales locked in first quarter contractions. And listen to this. According to his calculations, the retail sales contracted by 5%. They're down 5%. That's not a recovery. And also what happened this week is that the GOP, which ran on this fiscal conservative, and they're being conservative, they added another couple $100 billion of debt to the U.S. Now, there are Republican congressmen like Mike Lee that had a plan to say, okay, you want to spend more money, let's make some cuts in other places, and we'll make up for it. We won't have to expand the debt. Nope, they just added a couple $100 billion. Why? Because they know what I know. They know what you know, that there's no recovery, that things are contracting, not expanding. And the Republicans this is what I think, the Republicans don't want to take the blame when the economy implodes. They just, we funded whatever the president wanted. We funded his immigration. We funded Obamacare. We added to the deficit. This is just bad. I think they just don't want to take the blame, which is not leadership. It's weasel leadership, but not leadership. That's what I think's happening. Our friend Carl Denninger, who I haven't had on in a while, I'm going to have to invite him back. He has said, very smart guy, market-ticker.org. Carl Denninger says, listen, I've been to Congress, I've talked to the senators. Now, maybe the people in the House don't know what's going on, but I guarantee you everybody in the Senate does know what's going on. Mitch McConnell, the now majority leader in the Senate, knows what's going on. They know the economy is not expanding. They know there is no recovery. They know it's fudging and phony numbers and money printing and phony accounting and bond buying and all kinds of shenanigans behind the scenes and propping up mechanisms and controlling of all the market. They know that. They know that. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your donations. We've had a lot of tech problems, and so that helps us out. My favorite part, fear not. Prepare yourself physically, mentally, and above all, spiritually. Fear not.